Всем добрый день. Меня зовут Ирина Зингерман, я член президиума Ассоциации трансперсональной психологии.
I'm Irina Zingerman from the Presidium of the Association of Transpersonal Psychology.
И я с искренней радостью хочу вам представить Макса Шубаха.
And it's my great pleasure to introduce and to present Max Schubach
и Эллен Шубах.
and Ellen Schubach.
Поблагодарить вас, что вы приехали на эту конференцию.
And I would like to thank you for coming, for attending this conference.
Но для меня Макс и Эллен являются одними из ведущих специалистов по процессуально-ориентированной психологии.
For me, Max and Helena are one of the leaders of process-oriented psychology.
Макс Шубах, доктор философии.
Max Schubach, doctor of philosophy.
И он был одним из первых, кто вместе с Арнольдом Эми Менделом разрабатывали процессуально-ориентированный
One of
подход.
the pioneers of who developed the process-oriented approach.
И сейчас Макс и Эллен работают более чем в 15 странах мира,
Now, Max and Ellen work in more than 15 countries of the world,
разрешая мировые конфликты,
resolving world conflicts,
развивая наших лидеров.
developing our leaders.
Они работают с темой развития организации.
They work with the themes of development and organization.
Также Макс является одним из сооснователей и президентом Института глубинной демократии.
And also Max is a co-founder and president of the Institute of Deep Democracy,
который занимается развитием организаций
which actually works with organizational
и
development
фасилитированием.
and their facilitation.
Эта компания ведет свои тренинги в разных странах мира.
This company has its trainings in different countries of the world.
И насколько я знаю, на этом воркшопе
And as far as I know, this workshop,
Макс будет представлять Институт глубинной демократии.
at this workshop, Max will present Institute of Deep Democracy,
Если я не ошибаюсь.
if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not
Not
wrong.
quite,
Не совсем, но
И,
but close enough.
достаточно близко.
и, как мне рассказали, будет показывать разницу между процессуальным подходом
And as far as I was told, he will show a difference between the process approach
и процессуальными методами работы с бизнес-структурами.
and process work with business structures.
Я права?
Am I right?
Not quite.
Не совсем.
Поэтому я передаю слово Максу, чтобы на самом деле он рассказал именно то.
And then I give the floor to and pass the mic to give the floor actually, to Max sir, to tell what.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Irina.
Спасибо.
Old friend. Well, how is the acoustics back there? Can you hear me?
Там в конце зала вы нас слышите?
Maybe you should come up here.
Not quite well. А так лучше?
The microphone has no power on it yet, but they are working on it.
Ну, наши техники работают, не покладая рук. У микрофона обесточено.
However, since this workshop is on the many dimensions of power,
Но поскольку наш семинар посвящен различным аспектам энергии, силы,
we must have maybe replaced electrical power for voice power for the first 5 minutes.
в течение первых 5 минут нам придется заменить энергию электрическую, которая питает наши микрофоны, на энергию нашего голоса.
If you don't hear well all the way back, just bring your chair up to the front.
Если вам там в конце зала очень плохо слышно, то не поленитесь переместить свои стульчики сюда поближе.
Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you for the electricity crew for working on the problem.
И большое спасибо нашим техникам и электрикам, которые занимаются проблемой с электричеством.
We appreciate it.
Да, им понравилось, спасибо.
We have an hour, and my thought was for this hour to start out with a brief introduction what we mean by the concept of deep democracy.
Итак, у нас час, и я этот час хотела посвятить прежде всего понятиям глубинной демократии.
And then give you a chance to do a small exercise for yourself where you can have an actual experience of deep democracy
А потом хотела,
in
чтобы
yourself.
вы проделали некое упражнение для того, чтобы сами ощутили вот эту глубинную демократию в самих себе.
and then maybe have at the end 5-10 minutes to answer questions, engage in dialogue, and counter criticism.
И потом последние 5-10 минут нашего времени хотел бы посвятить сессии вопросов и ответов, такой, чтобы у нас начался с вами диалог, возможно, услышать какие-то критические замечания.
What do you think?
Как вы думаете?
Sound okay?
Хорошо?
Then if you have questions about business and what things Irina mentioned, you can maybe bring them at the end.
Поэтому, и если у вас возникнут какие-то вопросы по бизнесу и о том, о чем говорила Ирина, то, я думаю, можно эти вопросы задать в конце.
Deep democracy is a philosophical idea
Глубинная демократия – это философское понятие,
that is trying to look at spiritual, psychological, and we call it consensus reality components of power.
которое рассматривает духовное, психологическое и сознательное, то есть то, что связано с сознанием, именно эти компоненты в соответствии, в связи с властью.
We differentiate between 3 levels.
Мы рассматриваем 3 уровня.
The first level is consensus reality.
Итак, первый уровень – это реальность консенсуса.
Consensus reality, can you still hear me back there?
Все равно слышно?
Yeah. Consensus reality is a term that was coined by transpersonal psychologist Charles Stark.
Итак, термин или понятие...
People can hear you better if you stand up here. Oh, I see. You want a chair?
Сейчас мы переместим.
Becoming more and more interesting.
Итак, реальность консенсуса – это понятие, которое придумал...
Charles Stark.
Понятие, которое придумал Чарльз Старк.
It's a wonderful term which insinuates that the reality, the everyday reality that we perceive is not reality per se, but it's a reality that we agree upon.
И суть этого понятия заключается в том, что наша повседневная реальность, окружающая нас, не является реальностью как таковой, такой, какой мы ее воспринимаем, а она является такой, как мы о ней договорились.
Before I go on, I need to comment about the experience of standing here screaming at you.
Прежде чем я продолжу свою мысль, я хотела бы поговорить о реальности моего местонахождения здесь и такого громкого обращения к вам.
It's a little strange and not my everyday personality.
Для меня это несколько странно. Это не я такой, каким я бываю в повседневной жизни.
But as I noticed before my voice, I realized when I was in first grade, I had a teacher that always screamed at me.
Но я вспоминаю себя в младшей школе и вспоминаю себя таким, какой я был тогда. У меня был учитель, который всегда кричал.
So today is my day of revenge, I can scream back.
Так что настал мой день мести. Сегодня я кричу в ответ.
Consensus reality
Реальность консенсуса
allows us to meet more or less at 1 o'clock.
означает, что у нас с вами примерно час. Мы здесь до часа дня.
Because many of us wear these timepieces that we agree, we have a consensus, will give us a measure how to judge or experience time.
И благодаря тому, что многие из нас носят с собой такие средства для измерения времени, мы все более-менее представляем и договорились о том, как измерять время.
Oh wow. Oh, it's nearly oh wow.
Switch that to simultaneous.
Oh. Okay.
Should I suggest that to Russian?
Yes.
Ну, поскольку микрофоны у нас заработали, то, в принципе, мы можем перейти в синхронный режим. То есть наушники есть. Давайте тогда сделаем так, для убыстрения.
Okay.
Switch to simultaneous.
So, okay. I won't.
Did you scream enough?
No. I was disappointed.
You don't have to receive that.
Not yet. Okay, I can do it. Is that, are you on? Is that okay? Wonderful. Yeah, we were screaming back at my teacher and then time. So, for example, time, objective time, we can measure through our clock, or we also have a subjective experience of time. We call this, for the time being, a dreaming level. Dreaming level or an emerging level. If you are interested by a particular topic in this conference or by a particular presenter, you might find that the hour goes by in no time, or you happen to drop into a topic that isn't really your most favorite ones. You look at your clock every 3 minutes and wonder how can only have 3 minutes pass. That's a subjective level. We call that the dreaming level. That's true for time. That's also true for distance, as you know. Distance also has an objective level. I can measure the distance between me and my partner Helen, measure how many meters. But the actual distance or closeness that you feel can be very different. If you're in the room with something, if you're in this room on this side, and someone that you love is on the other side, you feel there's this huge amount of distance between you, and you think, how did I end up in this football stadium? Because the person is so far away. On the other hand, if you're in this room and your ex-partner happens to be in the same room, you suddenly wonder, how did I get locked into this tight cabin together? Distance between people, for example, has a relationship aspect. And we have a third level that we differentiate, which we call the sentient level. The sentient level is an atmospheric level. It's hard to describe because when you're trying to find words for it, it eludes its meaning. We feel it. You might sense a group atmosphere among us here, or if you look out into the trees there, you might sense a particular feeling or an experience, something that draws you to it, for example. But if you would have to describe it, you'd have a hard time. You would try to break it down into particular words or concepts, and you will find that what you try to actually experience is elusive. So we use, in process work, we use those three levels to differentiate the type of experiences that we are making. Now, as many of you know who have studied process work, we have a lot of affinity to Australian Aboriginals. And I wanted to bring that today because it's a, in my view, slightly different way of explaining these levels, which we also sometimes use in physics for showing how these levels are connected. But today I'd like to say something about Australian Aboriginals. You know, in many Australian Aboriginal languages, there is no past and future in the verbs. So you cannot say, for example, I saw or I have seen. Instead of, they're using suffixes that say, for example, I can see. Let's say, if you're an Australian Aboriginal, you can say, I see a kangaroo. If you say, I see a kangaroo, that means you actually see the actual kangaroo hopping. Right? Yeah. You can take a picture of it, and if you show the photograph, you'll have a kangaroo on it. So far, so good? Consensus reality. Then you can say, I dream saw a kangaroo. I dream saw a kangaroo means you haven't seen the actual kangaroo, but you have seen energy that reminds you of that kangaroo. The energy of the kangaroo is leaping forward with joy. So for example, you can say about a person can say, hey, I'm all excited, I have a new project. And the Aboriginal might say, I dream see the kangaroo, meaning I see the emerging of the kangaroo energy. And on the third level, on the sentient level, they have something that's considered I pre-saw the kangaroo. I pre-saw the kangaroo means there's nothing on the outside that actually brought you to think about it. Out of nowhere, you suddenly have an intuitive sense that a kangaroo will be present, or the kangaroo energy is present, and you will know that in the near future, you will either see a real kangaroo, or you will see something like a kangaroo energy kind of event. So far, so good? Now, here comes the part that I'm especially interested in. Now, the Aboriginals believe that this is how the universe evolves. You have first an intuition. The intuition eventually will become a subjective experience, and then finally transform into consensus reality where you can actually see it. What we call reality, the Aboriginals call history. That's the history. It's the least important part of it all, because at the moment something has become real, it actually means it's finished. It's complete. And that's not all that interesting. Much more interesting is to follow your intuitions, go with your intuitions, because that's where it's emerging. So from that viewpoint, the Aboriginals, and also us in process work, we differentiate between three kinds of powers. There is reality power. We find it in hierarchy, rank. This morning some of you were in the man-women issue, man-woman discussion of power distribution between different groups. That's a process of regular democracy. We're finding it on the emerging level, subjective experiences. How do I feel? The question is not how many rights do I have objectively, but how do I feel about those rights, and how do I experience them, and how can I talk about them? This is all part of the emerging reality. And then finally, the power of the sentient level, which is the power of beauty. The power of the sentient level is, if you walk down here and you look, I always have to look over at these trees there. Have you noticed, sometimes you come out of the building and the trees manage to take your head, turn it around, move it towards them, and get you to focus on them. They're very powerful, the trees. So So the power of beauty that is managing, that is able to manipulate your focus, that also belongs in the area of the sentient level. Deep democracy is the principle that every group or every individual learns to give all of those levels an equal amount of focus and an equal amount of rights. For example, in a group, this would mean that a democracy looks at majority, minority, and votes. But deep democracy would mean that the group would also look at the feeling level, the emotional interactions that they have, how people feel about the minority and majority issues, and on a sentient level, that the group spirit, or the principle that moves us all, also gets its voice. On an individual level, that would mean that you in your own life spend at least a good third of your time on what people spend their lives usually on, which is life, relationships, family, ambition, insights, despair, depression, hopelessness, ecstasy, falling in love, falling out of love, etc., etc. And that you spend another part of your life following your own, catching your own dreaming level. Like, for example, before, when I was screaming, I suddenly noticed, oh, the outer situation forced me to scream, but now I'm in a subjective experience of being back in grade school. That would be an example of bringing the dreaming process in. And then finally, the sentient level would be the ability to pick up these tiny little impulses and these tiny little, we call them quantum flirts, these tiny little ideas and thoughts that come up and try to follow them. So that's the basic principle of deep democracy. If you have to, how about one clarifying question? While you want to think about, I'd like to demonstrate a short exercise with one of you, where we use the sentient level to work with an everyday topic that you have. I'll give you a chance to think about if you might want to come up forward, and then afterwards you can each do that exercise on your own. You have any thoughts or questions at this point? Or? Yes?
I have not clearly understood the dreaming level or emerging level. Will you please explain?
The second one.
Second one.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, usually what we mean by dreaming level is all the experiences that we no longer identify with.
Okay.
Normally, we go through life, and when we say we are okay, or we feel good, or we feel well, I'm not answering you because I know you already understand, but I'm using the opportunity to answer, to talk to everyone. Okay. We assume that you're identified with the experience. Yes? The moment you can think of, if you can say of an experience I, it no longer appears as a disturbance, much of a disturbance. The moment you experience something where you feel you're out of control, you no longer think of it as I. For example, before, I think that's actually a pretty good example, I was lucky. I was forced into screaming, which I experience as not I don't think of myself as a screaming person. Yeah? So every problem that you have, every experience that you have where you have a sense you are it's out of your control. That's what we call dreaming.
But you have also said emerging level.
Yes.
That is the...
It's the same thing. Everything that's out of control is your fate to become reality very soon for you.
Okay.
Yes? When you follow that? I mean, you needn't agree with it.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Let's discuss this. Yeah. I need to read a little more.
What?
We need to talk a little more to get
talk
the full
more
hang
about
of
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the crucial.
Yes. Something seems to be out of control, And one moment, and the next moment, it's become you. Okay, who would like to come here for a simple demonstration? How do we pick? We use the intelligence of the pen. How's that? I'll spin it here. And that's the person most on this side, which I think is maybe you. Do you have your hand up? Yes. Okay. All right. So, what's your name?
Ravil.
Ravil?
Ravil.
Rovio?
Yes.
Okay, please come up here. Are you Russian?
Да.
Hi. 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 Okay, thank you for offering yourself. And wait a moment, I think I have to use this thing here, which I never figured out. How'd you get those on your ears? Backwards.
Maybe I can stay for the mic.
Yeah, like this. Over the ears. Yeah.
Oh, look, I did it. Sorry?
Would it be okay if I do it with a mic here, because otherwise it's very difficult to hear both of you and to offer the translation.
Okay, awesome, yeah, perfect. What's your name?
Yeah.
Max.
Your namesake, Maxim.
Oh, you're the Max. Oh, it's nice to meet you.
So, grab some mic,
Okay.
just in case. And do it like this.
Awesome, okay, great. Okay. See, I like that. You know, I like all these issues around translation and electricity.
Мне очень нравятся все эти темы, которые тут выскакивают, связанные с переводом, с электропитанием.
Because it's so relieving if something doesn't work completely.
Понимаете, это такое облегчение, когда что-то до конца не работает. Это действительно облегчение.
It's still working.
It's because the trickster.
Это вот энергия трикстера здесь.
And it forces people to make relationships.
Это понукает людей создавать отношения. Это то, что я обожаю.
Thank you for being here.
Это спасибо за то, что вышел сюда.
All right. So,
Итак,
if it's okay with you, we'll start right away with the exercise.
и если для тебя это приемлемо, давай прямо сейчас начнем. Yeah, okay.
Okay. You needn't say it out loud.
Нет необходимости что-либо тебе говорить громко.
But the first thing I'm going to ask is, do you have any issue that you work on your everyday life in the moment? You have maybe a relationship issue, a professional issue, a health issue, anything that you would want help with?
Если в твоей жизни какая-то тема, какой-то вызов, с которым ты сталкиваешься каждый день, что-то связанное в отношениях, в твоей профессиональной жизни, в состоянии здоровья, что-то вот, по отношению к чему ты чувствуешь себя беспомощным?
You can say that out loud, and if you don't want to say that out loud, you can just think it.
Ты можешь это что-то назвать и произнести вслух, если хочешь, а если нет, то просто, если ты нашел такое, просто думай об этом про себя.
Да, есть такое.
There is something.
Это связано с тем, что порой я не могу сказать «нет» людям, с которыми у меня есть эмоциональная связь.
It's possible for me to say no to the people with whom I'm emotionally related.
Или от которых, как я думаю, которые мне могут что-то дать, но они мне не нравятся.
Seemingly, I do think these people can give me something, can contribute to me something, but I don't like them.
Ну, по мнению моего ума.
Well, at least by the opinion of my mind.
Okay. Thank you.
Спасибо.
Иными словами, это взять на себя ответственность за свою жизнь, сказав тем самым «нет».
So, in other words, I'm taking responsibility for my own life if I say no in this situation.
I understand. Maybe many other problems. Who sometimes has a hard time to say no?
Наверное, в этом зале есть еще кто-то, кому в какие-то моменты трудно было кому-то сказать нет. Поднимите, пожалуйста, руки.
That's nearly 2/3.
Как минимум 2/3.
You must assume the others who didn't raise their hands have a hard time to ever say yes to anything.
Наверное, оставшиеся треть, у них были трудности с тем, чтобы сказать да.
Sorry.
Извините.
You deserve that.
Ну, вы заслуживаете.
Okay, so now we put this aside for the time being.
Теперь на какое-то время мы это оставим в сторону, хорошо?
And now we're going to do with you
То, что
a
я
sentient meditation.
делать эту ту самую медитацию разумности.
And I'll show you how to do it.
И я
You
покажу,
just
как это
turn
делать.
around.
просто поворачиваешься вот так.
Till you feel you find a direction
До тех пор, пока не
that
почувствуешь,
that
что ты
feels
находишь то направление,
somehow more right to me.
которое будет сегодня каким-то образом для тебя более правильное.
Глаза закрыты.
No,
Should I close my eyes? No.
you can, but you need.
То есть, если хочешь, можешь закрыть глаза, но в этом нет необходимости.
Good work.
Отлично, молодец.
Okay. Wonderful. Good work.
Чудесно, отличная работа.
Great. Okay. Now, walk a few steps in this direction and use your awareness till you know what feels right. What does it feel like to walk in that direction?
Теперь пройди несколько шагов в этом направлении и просто используй свое восприятие, свою осознанность с тем, чтобы ощутить, как это ощущается правильно. Вот сделать несколько шагов в этом направлении.
We'll discover it together. Just walk a few steps.
Просто пройди несколько шагов, мы откроем это вместе.
Это подобно тому, что я двигаюсь к своей цели.
It's kind of as if I'm moving towards my goal.
Это подобно тому, что все ненужное отбрасывается, рубится с плеча, ты просто идешь и берешь то, что тебе надо.
As if you're cutting away without second thought whatever is unnecessary and just reaching forward and taking what you need.
Оставляя сзади все, весь тот балласт, который тебя сейчас держит.
Leaving behind all the burden, all the ballast which currently is keeping you behind.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for you.
У меня к тебе вопрос.
If you could express this experience that you just had in a hand movement,
Если бы ты мог выразить вот тот опыт, который ты только что был в движении руки,
you want to try? What would that be?
хочешь попробовать, какое это могло быть движение?
Если бы я сделал эти шаги, и потом как бы двигалась моя рука,
So, as if I would do these steps and after that how my hand would move.
Like let's, this has to be wrong. Like you said, a hand movement that represents. You said.
Нет, вот как если бы вот твоя рука воплощала бы это.
You said my experience is moving towards the goal without any further ado, unburdened by other thoughts and just do what is necessary.
Ты только что сказал, что ты как если бы я шел к своей цели и как бы с плеча отсекал все лишнее и просто брал то, что нужно.
Now let's suppose we wouldn't have a translator.
Вот как если бы в этот момент что-то произошло с переводом.
And you would explain this experience to me in a hand movement.
И тебе нужно было бы жестом мне объяснить то, что с тобой происходит. Если бы перевода не было, то тебе надо было просто жестами объяснить.
Would it be this or this or
Какой это
this?
был бы жест?
Or what do you think? Like this?
This or
Okay. All right. Good work.
Хорошо,
That's
отличная
awesome.
работа. Спасибо.
That's your emerging step in life.
Вот сейчас ты поднимаешься на уровень шага в
No,
жизни.
maybe not this, because это я знал, но то, что мне хочется сделать, это подобно тому, что я держу меч и делаю так.
Holding a sword in my hand,
Okay.
like this.
Okay.
Хорошо?
Now I have one more question.
Еще
I'll
один
ask
вопрос.
one. Okay.
Последний.
Do it one more time.
Сделай это еще один
This
раз.
movement.
Вот это движение.
And as you do it,
И когда ты его делаешь,
yes, see from this perspective, advise yourself on the problem of saying no.
посмотри, вот как вот то, что происходит, дает тебе совет. Если дает совет по поводу того, как говорить нет.
Это показать в жесте.
Тяжело на чаще.
Do the gesture
Нет, сделай жест
and look at yourself.
и смотри на
There's
себя.
Robin.
Вот там есть Робин.
No. And he sometimes has a hard time to say no.
И иногда ему трудно говорить нет.
Do the gesture
Сделай жест.
and give him what advice? What would you say to
И
Robin?
какой бы совет ты ему дал?
Как только чувствуешь, что нужно сказать «нет», руби с плеча, невзирая ни на что, если твое сердце говорит «нет», как это делает воин.
Whatever you feel inclination to say no, just cut it from the shoulder. There's a Russian saying, cut away from the shoulder.
Cut away from the shoulder.
Cut away from the strike or shoulder strike, and just do it from your heart, like a warrior does.
Еще один жест,
One more gesture.
это не обязательно такой жест, это может быть и по-другому.
It could be in a different way. It's not exactly like this gesture, but it could be like this, like this.
В зависимости от того, где слабое место у противника.
Where is the weak spot in the enemy?
Many ways to say no.
Да, это
Может быть, это гибкость. This is flexibility.
или текучесть по-другому.
Что по-другому?
Текучесть.
It's or maybe fluidity in a different way.
Thank you.
Спасибо.
All right, I'm going to lead you now through the exercise. Try it yourself. I'll lead you through the various steps, and make sure you have a little time so you can walk, or where you stand, get up and sense the direction. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have to stand up, everybody.
It usually works better for walking, not always. Yeah. Stand up. If you want to, you of course need to do the exercise. You can also stand in place. Enjoy up and enjoy watching others. That's also great. Even if only you can make a couple of steps, it's good. And as you get in your place where that works for you, think about one issue in your everyday life. One issue in your everyday life. One issue in your everyday life that you could need some help or advice with. Okay, and when you have that, just start now a turning meditation. Be careful, keep your eyes open so you don't trip over a chair. Till you sense a direction that feels more right, more easy, more energetic for you at this moment. Feel free to go back and forth a little to make sure that it's the right one. And when you found it, walk a few steps and feel free to walk the same direction 2 or 3 times till you sense what does it feel like to walk that direction. Just know, just discover the experience that you made. Don't feel you have to interpret into it, just notice it. The rhythm, the swing. You discovered the essence or the meaning. See if you can express it with a hand movement. see if you can use that perspective to give yourself advice with that problem that you were mentioning in the beginning. When you've completed, go back to your chair. I know that you're finished. Maybe you want to share for a minute or two with your neighbor. It helps you to remember the end of the experience. Take a minute and exchange. Thank you, friends. Thank you. For statistical reasons, how many of you found some sort of answer in your walk? Oh, pretty good. Thank you. Pretty good. What?
But I don't know the interpretation.
Oh.
I have to talk to you.
You know, Aboriginals believe that we are songs that the universe is singing, each of us, and Aboriginals believe that we belong to the earth, and they believe that the walkabout is the earth calling us, and the experiences that we have are given by the earth. I thought it was a nice exercise to do with you guys today, because I heard yesterday this morning talking so much about the earth, which is the point of that exercise is let the earth draw you where you sense, where you feel it wants you to go, and appreciate and steward the experience that you have there. It's meant for you. It's a gift that the earth has for you. It's part of the song that you're meant to sing. We have a few more minutes. If you have questions, ideas, or thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Yes?
How do you apply this exercise or method when you work with conflicts in conflict resolution between enemies?
Well, we don't use this method that you just saw now. Conflict resolution, we use the principle behind this method, which, for example, we believe that conflicts are created by time spirits, and that the parties that are being pulled into the conflicts, most of them are being pulled in somewhat involuntarily. We work, I don't know if you guys know that, we work in Palestine. We are planning for 2012 a conference in Yalta with Kyrgyz, Kazakh, all the commonwealths of independent state to work on those difficulties. And the first approach in conflict resolution is that we try not to be at war with war, but we try to be at peace with war. We say yes to conflict, and then we don't think people should make peace. We think people should become more aware of what they get out of the war. So we help people in a way to strengthen their position, in the hope that through the awareness of the strengthening position, a more organic solution will come. So we do, I think you were there this morning. No. So we have like special large group work where we work especially with groups that are in conflict, is using the same idea, which is instead of thinking at two warring parties, you can say there are two vectors, like in physics, or two directions that clash. And they clash because they want more relationship. So you have to say yes to the clash first, so over time people can develop that relationship. There's a lot of hands up in the front. In case anyone has a question in the back, you're still allowed to ask it.
Почему это называется демократией?
Why do you call this democracy? Deep democracy?
Why it is called democracy? Deep, I don't question deep, I'm questioning democracy. Why is democracy?
Well, it's a wonderful question, thank you. In our viewpoint, obviously, because nobody can have more than their own viewpoint, in our viewpoint, the problem with democracy is it looks at minority and majority. That's very good. Democracy is an attempt for a more equal power distribution. This workshop is on power. So we forward more equal power distribution. The part that doesn't work is if the power distribution only happens on consensus reality. You don't really have, you have in one way of power distribution, but the other levels are lacking. So you don't really have a power distribution in a holistic sense. That's why we created deep democracy. For us, this is, for me personally, I'm a political person. I spend most of my life in conflict areas, and I would like people to collaborate, if possible, with less pain and with less death involved. So in the background of these issues are power distributions, and to be able, for example, if you do an exercise like this every morning, when you get up, before you go about, do this exercise, walk for 5 minutes, where it pulls you. For me, that's a political issue. It's a spiritual democracy, gives voice to a side of you that usually is being more on the margin, has more a minority voice in yourself. Does that make sense? Great question. How about one more? And then two more, and then that's it. Sorry. Okay.
In that exercise, when we come to the third level, sentiment. Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, sentiment level. When we come to it in our exercise.
Where?
When?
Yeah. The moment, thank you, great question. The moment you sense the direction, then it's irrational. You can't say it has to be there because of this or this. It's an irrational sense of knowing this is right. You don't know why. You just know it's the path of least effort.
So we come from third to first, yes? Like, am I
Yes.
right?
Yes. You have a problem on 1. Yes.
And we come from third.
You go down to 3. Out of 3, you make dreaming with movement.
From 2 to 1, right?
And then you use what you find here as an application to 1. Good thinking.
Does the direction has a significance in the sense of east, west, north,
Yes.
south?
Yes.
Will you explain?
Yes. Well, you know, many traditions work with directions.
With the exercise, with reference to exercise.
Many traditions work with directions, you know. Native Americans work with directions. Many, like Tao Te King, uses directions. Yes, you can use, for example, if you want to, you can work with a company with directions, or an organization with directions, by trying to find out what's the spirit of the company, and then actually say what direction would that be, and ask maybe the executive staff to walk that. Some places like Korea, for example, which is very direction-oriented, we've done this and that works well. Europe and United States, not all companies, executives are necessarily open right away to walking directions, except for California. So, but as you notice, we work here with the subjective experience of the direction, and that we found all people all over the world from all different paths of lives easily find a direction like that. It's very simple. It's an innate capacity that all of us have. We're just not using it anymore. So, you had a question too.
Yeah. Last one. Can we have, unfortunately.
Well, it is about this morning. How do you have you experienced that this structure is strong enough and wide enough to hold the intensity of some conflicts? I'm concerned that many things can be opened up and they don't get any closing, and lots of frustration erased, and how the individuals deal with that and all that stuff. Because it's difficult.
That's a great question. That's a great question. If you work with a group, should you open something up if it can't be closed? That itself is a group process. I have no answer for it. Each group should decide. But I can show the 2 roles. The group process is, one role here says, we must be careful. We must be careful. We have learned in our tradition, society, culture to deal with conflict in a particular way. It has brought us in some sort of harmony up to here. For example, we have learned to not talk about conflict, repress conflict, learn to talk indirectly about it, find resolutions. Later on, something happened and then we don't do, so we send a little flowers, or actually would we prefer if nothing gets opened and then we don't have the frustration that it's been opened. Over here the other role says, yes, but life is frequently like that. You can't ever complete anything. That's not enough of a reason. We must go deeper into conflicts. Conflicts we have not won war less over the last 60 years, 65 years since World War II. Conflicts continue. We need to experiment and try to resolve new conflicts. But not for me. I'm traumatized, I'm frustrated. If the conflict gets brought up and can't get completed, I wish it wouldn't have brought up. Yes, I understand. In that case, we must make sure that you are safe and that you can leave the room. But those of us who want to work on conflict should have an opportunity to do it. That's part of the group process. Each group must decide on their own what's right for them.
And Is there a way that you take care of the individual within the group, or is just dealing with the group?
Sorry, say again.
Well,
No, just say again. I just couldn't hear it acoustically.
Ah, okay. So this is always a group process, or is there a way that you take care of what is going on for the individual within the group? Is it contemplated within the group or not?
I understand. It depends. Many places, for example, we just come out Tuesday, 4 days ago, we were in Kibera, which is the second largest slum in Africa. It's 1.6 million people in the size of like a park with 200 toilets. The question there is not anymore, is there safety for the individual? Because it actually is a risk for everyone to just live there. So we use this method in groups. They had a lot of tribal violence, a lot of people got killed in Kibera after the last elections in Kenya. So we work in a lot of areas where the groups don't even agree to sit down and talk. Now it's very different. We also work with large corporations. For them, it's important that you have safety issues, that the individual can only has to face as much as it wants, and then according to the group, together with the group, we set rules. The method itself has no rules on its own. If you are working in a real conflict, the moment any group, any conflicting group will agree to rules, the conflict is basically done. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say. The moment, like many boxers say, you know, all these plans work till you get hit the first time. The war crimes, human rights, what's it called, ethical warfare, all these things, they work till you lose. The moment you lose, they're all out of the window. So we are trying to find the rules along which conflict evolves, and then help people to work with it and process it faster, not so much resolve it. So I really appreciate the question, which comes more out of a also therapeutic background. When you have a therapy group, of course, safety is a prime issue. Russia is so safe. Isn't that incredible? Huh? It is so incredible. I noticed the pleasure here, these last 2 days, we went for a jog along the river. Yes? No? Ellen and me, we went jogging on the river for half an hour around.
Moscow River, right?
Right, no, is it? What's the river right across here? What?
Oh, lake.
Is that a lake? That is a circular lake. We ran around the lake, and then Ellen went out on her own in the evening to do shopping. This is a big privilege in many places on the world. You cannot have two people jogging, and you cannot have a woman going out shopping on her own. So appreciate the safety of Russia and Moscow. Thank you for your presence. Have a wonderful conference.